Hi everyone! We're going to talk about sonata and concerto forms today. These words might leave you feeling and thinking a lot of things. Mainly, wait, what? You might be feeling confusion, uncertainty, despair, or even regret. Not to worry, that's why I'm here. Let's talk about sonata form. Sonata form has three main parts, are exposition, development, and recapitulation. For this, I'm going to use cake for our little model here. The frosting of the cake is going to represent the theme, and the actual cake part is going to represent the key that theme is in. We'll have a transition into a new key. The end of that transition section, there's going to be an MC, or medial caesura, usually a big pause, a half cadence in that new key, and that'll lead us into our secondary tonal area. This is our secondary theme right here. You'll notice this is new frosting, new cake, so new theme, new key, different than this primary theme. At the end of that, we'll have an EEC, Essential Expositional Cadence. This is the first PAC in that new key, leading us into some closing material. The next section is the development. You'll notice that this cake is a lot more fragmented. It's not quite as stable as the other pieces. That's to show us that the development is not going to be as stable as the exposition. There's going to be a lot of fragments. It's probably going to modulate through quite a few keys. At the end of the development, there's going to be a retransition. That'll take us back to that original key, that chocolate cake. So here we are in our recapitulation, which is a bit similar to the exposition, but with some differences. We have our primary theme again, and then we have our transition. So it's still going to feel very transitional and developmental, but its goal will not be to take us into a new key. So it'll sound very different. And then we'll have a medial caesura right here. That'll take us into our secondary theme, and you'll notice that this theme is still the strawberry frosting, but it's in chocolate cake. This shows us that it's in the same key as that primary theme right here. We have our EEC again, and our closing material, and that'll round out our sonata form. So let's talk about another form that's similar but not quite the same, and that's going to be concerto form. Again, this is pretty similar. The main difference is that there are two expositions here. So our first exposition is going to be played by the full orchestra. We have our primary theme, then we'll have a transition. You'll notice that this transition does not modulate. We're still in chocolate cake territory, same key, and then we'll have closing material. Our second exposition will actually be played by a soloist. So concertos are usually used to feature a soloist. So there's going to be lots of virtuosic passages that the soloist is going to get to play. We're going to show off that soloist as much as we can. So they'll play the primary theme again. They will have a transitional section, but this one actually will modulate the new key. This is our secondary theme again. And then we'll go into our development, which is a lot the same, fragmented, developmental, modulatory. We'll go into our retransition. Our recapitulation will have our primary theme, our transition, but again, will not modulate. We're in that same key, the original key, with that secondary theme, and then we'll have our closing material. So you'll see that this recapitulation is quite similar to this first exposition, and that's pretty normal. This recapitulation will probably, though, feature both the orchestra and the soloist. Alright, now that we know the basics of concerto form, let's take a look at a real-life example. This is Clara Schumann's Piano Concerto in A minor. As you can see, it follows the basic format of concerto form. We have our first exposition, played by the orchestra, and the second exposition, which is longer, played by the soloist, in this case on the piano. We have our development and our recapitulation here. Let's delve in a little bit deeper. To one section, I want to look at the primary theme here in the second exposition. This is our primary theme. This is very recognizable throughout the piece. It cadences with a half cadence in A minor, which lets in, I would call this phrase an antecedent, the next one a consequent, kind of answers it. This next phrase actually kind of goes through a few different keys, the relative major, which is C, and as well as the dominant. Let's take a listen to this transition phrase right here. This is already a little bit more transitional. It's getting us into that new key. Again, I would say this is a consequent of this phrase, the antecedent. It answers it, it continues progressing that forward. As you can see, this exposition is quite a bit shorter than this one, and I think most of that space comes from the fact that this transition is much bigger than this tiny baby transition here. I think this is because this transition performs an explicit function. It's modulating. This one goes through some keys here, but It's not really modulating until we get to here. I would also say that this exposition is really to feature that piano soloist. This one is about the orchestra, so it doesn't need to be as long. This one has some virtuosic long passages. Again, let's take a look at this development. Look how uneven these phrase bubbles are. Compared to these, you can almost like see the stability in these phrase bubbles. They're much more even. These ones are kind of all over the place, and that's kind of the nature of the development. Let's take a listen to this phrase right here in the middle of the development. This is a good example. We're taking that primary theme that we heard earlier and it's fragmenting it, it's modulating it. This development is really just playing with that, varying that throughout this whole thing until we get here to this retransition, which takes us back into the original key. Now this is really interesting about this recap. You see that it's a lot shorter. Usually the recap will look a lot more like the exposition, and this recap does indeed alternate between the soloist and the full orchestra, but it does not seem to really mirror this exposition. This really leads directly into that second movement, which I won't discuss here, but is very interesting and I recommend you go listen to it. So just to recap, pardon my pun, our concerto form is going to have two expositions. We'll have a primary theme transitioning but not modulating into a secondary theme. That'll go into our second exposition played by the soloist. This one will modulate into the secondary theme, which will be in a new key. We'll then go into our development. This will be very developmental, transitional, modulatory, probably go through a few keys, and then we'll retransition back into the original key. Typically, the recap will kind of mirror the first exposition with both the soloist and the orchestra taking turns playing. This one has an especially short recapitulation. And that's concerto form. Thank you all for watching. Like and comment down below, and I hope you all get some delicious cake today.